the content that was doing the best on social media wasn't the worksheets that I was using with my kids. It wasn't the literacy centers I was using with my kids. It was the tips that I was sharing for classroom management. So I decided to make that shift to really niching down and really focusing on sharing classroom management strategies. And the growth that I saw when I actually made that decision is just incredible.
Welcome to the podcast for anyone who has been known as that teacher.
That teacher who is always dreaming up new ideas. That teacher who has an Instagram account. That teacher who goes on TikTok to share the latest teaching trends. That teacher who isn't afraid to try new things.
We're Megan and Alyssa, and we were both known as that teacher before we started our ed tech company, Pop PD.
If you're an educator who's been looking for something more opportunities to lead, grow, and inspire others, we are here to show you the newest pathways to leadership for modern educators.
We'll interview teachers who have taken their leadership beyond the four walls of their classroom to become thought leaders in the online space.
You'll hear about the ups and downs of their experience sharing their educator journey online, and we hope you'll be inspired and re-energized by their unique stories. If you've been trying to crack the Instagram code, this episode is for you. This week, we talked to kindergarten teacher Gina Venancio about how she went from experiencing imposter syndrome and the feeling that she wasn't enough of an expert in her niche to feeling confident in sharing about and monetizing her passions as a teacher online. Gina walks us through her exact content creation process and how she uses my visibility blueprint to make coming up with ideas simple. She shares how she repurposes content, batch records her reels, and how she measures success with her social media content. Spoiler alert, it's not her follower count. Gina's reels are so good, with some topping over 1 million views, and we discuss why this visibility strategy is so key for her marketing, plus next steps to convert even more of those new followers to buyers. We even dig into launching your first online program and how you can use social media to refine your offer suite. This episode is absolutely full of amazing advice for new and seasoned business owners looking to bring more intention and creativity to their marketing. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. Both the Extracurricular Podcast and That Teacher Podcast are brought to you by the team at Pop PD. Our mission is to empower teachers to connect with one another around sharing teaching strategies, tips, tricks, and ideas you actually want, creating a learning experience as dynamic as you are. We know you need access to ongoing, relevant resources to support your teaching career, and it's our mission to help you feel fully supported as a modern educator. Check out our platform now at poppd.co to sign up for your free interactive workspace where you can access ideas and strategies for teaching, organize your favorite teaching ideas, and add your own notes and to-dos to keep everything in one easy-to-access spot. We have new challenges every month to help inspire you on topics like podcasting with your students and using ChatGPT to make communicating with families easier. If you're a school leader or instructional coach in charge of PD, you'll love our platform for curating your own PD library from our content or easily adding your own content to share with your teachers. And of course, we have a community space where you can come together with other teachers around the world to get advice, to laugh, to cry, to vent, whatever you need. It's off of Facebook. It's our little corner of the internet where we can be ourselves. Just click the community button on poppd.co and we'll see you there. Welcome to the That Teacher Podcast, Gina. We are really excited to have you here and to hear about your journey into becoming someone who shares their ideas and expertise in the online space. So we heard on the Extracurricular Podcast all about how you kind of got into thinking about classroom management. Can you give us kind of the story of that journey of how you got into classroom management, and also like how did you decide to start sharing it online?
Yeah, I started teaching about 12 years ago. This will be my 12th year in the classroom. And I wasn't always good at classroom management. I always had, one or two students who struggled to follow directions or expectations. And I just kind of always managed them, right? Like struggled, but managed them the best that I could. And then about my fourth year of teaching, I had a group of students who really struggled to follow any expectations in the classroom. They really displayed every behavior from like just constantly talking to destroying the classroom, running out of the classroom. And I just had no idea what to do. I remember standing at the front of my classroom and just looking out at them and being like, wow, like it wasn't supposed to be this hard, right? Like I had always dreamed of being a teacher. And I just, I never thought that I would have that feeling of failure standing in front of like 24 5-year-olds. But I just looked at them and I was like, I don't know how to get their behavior under control. I had tried every strategy that I could, and I was really struggling. So this one day I sent my kids out to recess. Luckily, we had like a morning and afternoon recess. So we just made it to recess. I sent them out the door and I went into the office, and our secretary, she knew that I had a really tough class, and she said, how are you? How are things going today? And I just burst into tears. And, there were other people in the office, so I was embarrassed. There were parents, there were teachers, there were my admin, and I didn't want anyone to see me crying. I also didn't want anyone to know that I was like struggling that much, right? So there was this little room. It was like a storage supply closet, and I just ducked into that room. And a few minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and it was my teammate. And she was surprised to find me in the closet, just kind of hiding. And she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything and nothing's working. They won't listen to me. And she just said, well, what are you going to do? No one's coming. She said, the cavalry is not coming. There's no one you're going to call who is going to like wave this magic wand and give you, the one thing to do to change your student behavior. So what are you going to do? Are you going to leave, or are you going to try something new? And I considered it. I was like ready to throw in the towel because I didn't know how people could feel that way for their whole teaching career, right? Like I was like, this is not sustainable to wake up every day with like a pit in my stomach. So I'm like, okay, like I need to try something else or I need to leave. So I luckily was able to, I met a BCBA, a behavior analyst, and she taught me about student behavior in a way that we were never really taught it before. So, I felt like in my grad classes, even just my teacher prep program, we were really never taught how to handle student behavior, like challenging student behavior. We were told very low level things like make classroom rules and, like hold your kids to expectations, but that's pretty much it. So she recommended, like some trainings that I go to. I would go online and I would watch every video that I could find. I would get all of the books off of Amazon and just read and read and read. And I wound up realizing that there was so much more to student behavior that we didn't know. And no one was talking about it. No one in my school knew about it. Whenever I would reach out to like interventionists or admin, they would all give me the same strategies to try. Use a smiley face chart, have your kids earn rewards, but none of those things were working. So I took what I learned about student behavior. I completely changed how I run my classroom, how I interact with my students and my expectations. And I was able to turn that school year completely around. I started sharing what I learned with teachers in my building, and they started seeing a big transformation in their classroom as well. And I thought to myself, if I'm struggling with this, there must be other teachers out there that are struggling with this too. So I just started sharing on Instagram just things that I was trying, things that I was doing. And I just started getting messages from teachers saying, either asking me questions or saying that they tried something and it helped them so much in their classroom. So I was like, okay, we're gonna keep sharing. I didn't feel like an expert at all at that point, but I just wanted to help teachers as much as I could. So I just started putting tips and tricks out there, and just the amount of feedback I've gotten from other teachers about how much what I share, A, doesn't make them feel alone, and B, helps them manage student behavior in their classroom has just been completely overwhelming. So now that's what I focus on. I focus on helping teachers all around the world, which is still crazy to me, manage student behavior so they can spend less time managing disruptions and have more time to teach their kids.
There's so many good things that we heard there. And one of them that I think is really important that we say a lot on this podcast, but that we can always remind people of is that you don't have to feel like an expert to start sharing. If anybody has ever walked into your classroom and said, how do you get your kids to do that? Or how did you do that with your students? Then you are an expert enough. You are doing something that someone else wants to emulate or can relate to. And one thing that Gina does really well is creates content that's easy to relate to. She's not afraid to say, like, I have been there. I also struggle with this. And then when she gives you a tip, it's that much more trustworthy because you know she's on your level. She's been there too. I'd love to know, what was the tipping point where you decided to monetize? We've worked together a long time, so I kind of already know, but like, when did you say, okay, I'm like sharing my tips and tricks and I think I can make some money here?
Yeah, well, just back to something that you said, like that's really what I learned from you, Alyssa, was that you don't have to be an expert, or in air quotes, an expert, in order to start sharing things. That was really hard for me. I always would like reach out to people and be like, what title do I need to get? What degree do I need to get in order to start showing up online and sharing these tips with people? And that's something you helped me realize, was that I don't need another degree or another title. I just need to show up and share what has been working for me. So I am always so grateful for that, because I would not have even started. I am someone who like wants everything in a row before they like go and expose themselves, right? So yeah, I honestly focused a lot on TPT at the beginning. I really wasn't focused on classroom management, again, because I didn't feel like I was like that expert. So I was just making random products, things, mostly things I was using in my classroom, and I would just share them with teachers on TPT, because I figured if I was making it, I might as well try to make some sort of money off of it, right? And I realized that the content that was doing the best on social media wasn't the worksheets that I was using with my kids. It wasn't the literacy centers I was using with my kids. It was the tips that I was sharing for classroom management. So I decided to make that shift to really niching down and really focusing on sharing classroom management strategies. And it just, like, the growth that I saw when I actually made that decision is just incredible, because I feel like when we started working together, I was in such, like, I had been at this plateau for forever, and I was just like, everyone's sharing about literacy centers. Why does no one interact with my literacy center posts? But that really wasn't what I was passionate about. And I think it came across in my content. Like, I was just churning out content because I thought it was what I had to do. So when I started being passionate about what I shared, I think that that really came through to people who were consuming my content. And it actually fueled my growth. I went like years without gaining like any followers, and I would have like 10 likes on posts, and then automatically it was just like, okay, you're being seen now, which is crazy. And then I kind of around that same time took the shift from focusing so much on my TPT products to packaging my knowledge into a knowledge product, which is my course. And I decided to share that with teachers online, which has been so fun, so crazy, because like I said, I don't feel like an expert, right? So that the fact that people are actually coming to me for this course and that they want to learn from me is just, I'm so grateful for it. It's amazing.
Oh, so good. I feel like we paid you to say all of that, because it's just exactly what I feel like I kind of preach is like, we feel like, okay, I know I could talk about literacy centers, I could talk about math, I could talk about behavior management, but you're exactly right that if you're not passionate about one of those things, that's going to come across, and you're spreading yourself so thin. But it is a good strategy to just try something. So what you did by sharing about literacy centers and then noticing you weren't getting a reaction, that was still a test. It was a test. And then you saw, well, when I lean in over in this direction, I'm getting more feedback. Then you took that feedback and you said, oh, okay, I think they want an online course. You're kind of like testing out, throwing a little spaghetti at the wall, but then also seeing what happens and following that. I think that Megan and I talk about this a lot with course creation. A lot of times creators will come to us and say, I want to make an online course. I think I want to make it about this. I think I want to call it this. And we say, well, where did you get that information? And the person is like, well, that's what I think people need. But you have to actually go listen and see what are people responding to. Validate that idea first before you start diving into creating all of these things. And you did that by listening to like, where am I getting feedback? And then really leaning in before you started creating your materials. So that's all great, great advice. Megan, anything you want to add there before I ask her a million more questions?
Yeah, just to underscore that feedback piece is it's all information. It's all data that you can take in, right? I think for better or for worse, right? Sometimes you think something is so great and then you put it out there and you're like, oh, this didn't land at all, right? But you can kind of pay attention to, all right, well, did anyone give any type of comment on that or ask any questions? A lot of times ask questions that people have asked can be like the best kinds of feedback because they either aren't sure, so you have a messaging issue, or they just want to know more and more. And so maybe that piece didn't land, but you had a couple of questions and you can kind of weasel your way in by answering them, and it can kind of just lead you down the path. So that really paying attention and noticing what you're doing and how people are reacting to it, I think can be really helpful. And if you're thinking, well, no one's really paying attention to what I'm doing, so how do I get started with that? It's starting somewhere and even just noticing the little shifts, or asking even a teacher friend down the hall, like this or that. Or if I showed this to you, what would your question be? So get some of that like free feedback or insight and just start pulling on those little threads. And you kind of got to grasp at straws at first sometimes, but getting that initial momentum and then finding the thing will help you kind of swirl around. You can also do what Alyssa is best at, which is stalk online. Look at other people's accounts and the questions and comments that are being on those accounts, not so that you can copy exactly what someone else is doing, but so that you can see, oh, well, this person talks about, one element of behavior management or teaching math or literacy, whatever it is. But I kind of do it this way, or my perspective is this, like trying to find your own unique spin on something, or what are people, frustrated about in that Facebook group, or what are they talking about in the new Pop PD community, whatever it is, trying to just notice what people are talking about or asking about, and then going from there. That's a great way to get started if you are kind of not sure what direction to go in.
Yeah, that transitions me into what I was going to ask Gina next, which is, did you deal with imposter syndrome at all? Or maybe not even imposter syndrome, but like, where do I fit in here? Because there are a lot of people who talk about classroom management and behavior management online in a variety of different ways. Did you ever wonder, like, where do I fit in? Does my voice fit in here? Or was it a clear yes for you?
Oh my gosh, all the time. I follow a lot of people who talk about classroom management. And for the longest time, I felt like I couldn't say anything because it was already being said. And that was a really big shift for me to make. And Alyssa, I'm sure you were the one who helped me make this shift as well. Just realizing that there is room for everyone. And just because someone else has said it doesn't mean that they said it in A, the way that you would say it, or B, that people are even understanding it, right? Because I would do so much market research and I would see the same questions over and over again. And I would think to myself, this person already answered this. Like, if you would just watch that reel, they answered that question in there. So I'm thinking to myself, why haven't people mastered this, right? So then I started thinking like, okay, well, maybe I can just put my own spin on it and explain it in a different way, and maybe that will help. So I still battle that to this day. There are a lot of really amazing accounts that I just have to mute because if I open up Instagram and I see that, I am just going to like quit my course, right? I'm going to be like, okay, they're doing better than me. There's no point in me trying. So that has been something I've done for like my own mental health, has just been trying to put blinders on and just focus and stay in my own lane, which is hard because you also want to collaborate with people. But I think that just realizing, just starting and just putting yourself out there and realizing like you can all have different spins on the same topic. Someone is not going to say things the exact way that you would say it. and they're not going to teach it in the exact way that you would teach it. And just reminding yourself that you have value to share as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think also people like to learn from different people. So, I mean, your audience ends up mirroring you. So I'm like a millennial mom. And so millennial moms might like to learn from me, but the Gen Zers maybe want to learn from this Gen Z marketer, and that's fine. And it's not always just about age, but it just could be like a personality click. And that's why that whole know, like, and trust factor is a thing. And that's why when we talk about creating your content pillars, you have kind of like your main content pillars, which is what you show up and talk about in the online space. But then you have like these relationship building content pillars where it's like, well, I always talk about being a mom and I always talk about French fries and food. And so I'm going to attract people who are like-minded in that way. That just helps you bring in your right people. And there will be people who want to learn from you just because they clicked with you over something totally different. Like they like Taylor Swift and you like Taylor Swift, or something like completely different and off the rails, but it helps you connect. I think that's great advice. I also think there's I will get off my soapbox, but I did want to mention something you said about putting your blinders on. There's a good balance between, you have to at some point put your blinders on, because when it's not good for your mental health, or it sends you down a spiral, then let's just not look. I think that's wonderful. And I do that too. On the other hand, we don't want to be totally blind to what's going on, because then we don't understand where we fit in and how our unique take can help. So I think it's this delicate balance of like, okay, let me see what's out there when I have the mental capacity for that, after I put together my course and launched or something like that. And then when I'm about to head into a launch, blinders are on, because if I look at somebody's, I'm going to go downhill and then I'm not going to be able to launch with passion. So it's a delicate balance. And then, like you said, being open to collaboration, but also knowing when that's going to just set you off course, and just being aware of all of that. And also, being aware of your mental health for sure. Anything you want to add, Megan?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay, perfect.
You got it.
I want to dive in on Reels, because if you haven't seen Gina's Reels yet, they're hysterical. I was saying before we got on today, they just crack me up. They're so relatable. They're very much top of funnel. So the strategy she uses is creating relatable and funny content with some education in there as well, for the purpose of getting new people, new eyes on her content, which is really smart. And so you can go over to her Instagram and actually see what she does, but I want to dig in and get the behind the scenes on this a little bit. You didn't always do this. Like, I feel like you very recently leaned into this. So how did you know that relatable Reels were going to be for you? Did you just try one day and you saw success and you kept going, or what was the pathway to doing these Reels?
Yeah, so the way I always thought about Reels was always like, okay, I was looking at other people's and I was going to recreate it, right? Like they did this, they got 1 million likes, it's going to work for me. And I quickly realized that didn't work. I was like finding trending audio and I'm like, okay, they use this to teach content and they just like put text on it. I'm going to do the same thing. And I was crossing my fingers that I would have the same outcome. And I was spending so much time creating content and I was moving the needle nowhere. And then one day I just posted, I don't even remember what reel it was. I made a reel using audio that I thought related to like how I was feeling about student behavior in the classroom. And it just blew up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I cracked the Instagram code. Like finally people are viewing my reels. And so I just tried to lean into duplicating what I did. And I realized every time I would look at my metrics, that the reels that people were liking and commenting and sharing and saving and the follows that I were getting all related to reels that were like semi-humorous, which I don't consider myself to be funny. But, I just try to find, I try to recreate that now and just find like audio that supports that. And that's what I'm just trying to lean into, because that's what I notice has worked for me. So I guess the short answer is, instead of trying to copy what other people are doing, which I tried for so long, and I was just at this like plateau, looking at what resonates with your people and just trying to lean into that and double down on that is really what I've found to be most effective.
Do you think do you see that top of funnel content translating? Like, do you see your email list growing? Do you have more people on the waiting list for your course? Like, are you seeing that translate?
Yes, I am. My email list has pretty much doubled in the last year since I've started to use this strategy. So as my Instagram account, my waiting lists as well have. I am still like, I just did a launch of my course and I set a super high goal for myself and I didn't make it. I did increase from last year. So I'm trying to focus on that and being like, okay, that's still growth. So I do still need to figure out where that disconnect is, why my content is doing so well and I didn't reach that high goal that I had for myself. I'm still not exactly sure. I have to do like my launch debrief and see like what happened. But I still call it a win because I was able to increase sales and conversions from last launch. So hoping that I'm still on the right trajectory.
You totally are. Just to give my 2 cents of business coaching, not that you asked, but if you even matched last year, you're doing great.
Okay.
And that's because like the market has changed, right? When we were selling courses in 2020, 2021, and even 2022, it was fairly easy because that was the time that online courses were booming. People were mostly virtual. They were trying to get their information as quickly as possible, especially with behavior and classroom management. So if you even matched, you're good. But I love the way that you're going to use your launch debrief to go back in and see where did that breakdown happen, because your people, my guess is they need more warming. They're coming in at funny, relatable content because they are at a problem awareness level where they can just relate to how bad it is, but maybe they have not yet taken steps toward figuring out a solution. So your marketing probably has to walk way back to get them to be course ready. So that would be just my couple of 2 cents. But tell us about your content creation process. And I'm asking this from a personal standpoint because I cannot get myself to do reels still. Video is very hard for me. So how do you walk us through start to finish? What does your content creation process look like for your reels?
Yeah, so I use your visibility framework. I do 4 posts a week and I do connect, teach, sell. So I just, map that out on a Google Doc, what each day is going to be. And then I am trying to get better at repurposing my content. So I'm trying to start with whether it's my blog post or my email and mirror that in my social media. Because what I was doing for a while was I would do all of my blog posts, then I would do all of my emails, and then I would be like, okay, what am I sharing on social media? And it was just so much creation because I was technically creating like 3 separate buckets of content every week, which was so draining. So now I'm trying to start with my blog post and then move that into an email and then take that information and try to craft reels based on it or posts based on it. So once I have the topics, I just go through and I try to find audio that is trending and also is relatable and in like my style of trying to like poke at the pain points, right? And I find that audio, I plug that in, and then I personally like batching my reels. So I go in to my classroom. If it's during the school year, I usually batch like one morning before school starts. If it's like in the summer, I try to go on like one day of the week and just film them all for that week. And then they're all done. And then all I have to do is post throughout the week. So that's what I find is most helpful for me. I do think, like you said, I need to do a little bit more work of just like warming people up because I think that a lot of my group is red and yellow right now of problem awareness. And I need to find the balance of like using humor, but also teaching through that reel, right? So that's something that I'm still playing with. But I do feel like content creation, sticking with that visibility framework. So I know, okay, every week I am doing the same theme on each day and also trying to repurpose content from my blog to my email to social media gives me a really good starting point. So I'm not starting from scratch every week.
So good. A+++ student right here.
Thank you.
And what I love is you're mixing kind of a set structure that keeps you like confident and kind of say accountable, but just like, knowing what you're kind of getting into each week. There's a cadence there, but also the way you've been talking about really this whole episode is really flexible. And a lot of it is about noticing and paying attention, trying something and seeing what happens, noticing how you can evolve over time on something. Like even just, you could kind of mention, I'm trying to get better at repurposing. You're almost setting like little mini goals, even within your business, like kind of from an operations level of like, I can make this a little bit easier if I repurpose, like, let me try that this week. Or, like there's just these little shifts that you're making. And even just the way that you're talking about it, I think that you've clearly developed this confidence over time. But I think that for people who are either getting started or feeling in a moment in their business where everything feels really hard, I think that trying to balance that level of, let me find some structure to support me, but not feel like it is strangling me, not feeling like I am so beholden to that I am failing if I don't follow it. Having a structure that supports you, and then feeling like you can kind of, you use the word play, test things, move around, that really is a core part of, building and kind of running your own business that can be so challenging, but is a constant, I think, thing to work on if you're not quite there, of feeling comfortable trying things out. It seems like you've really gotten to that point. Maybe anything you can speak to that helped you get there would be great. But just to kind of remind people that having that attitude and coaching yourself, even through that attitude, reminding yourself of that's how you want to try to approach things, I think can be really powerful into making it, manageable and doable over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think I started with too much structure. I was like, okay, every Sunday I'm going to share a quote. Every Monday I'm going to share a classroom management tip. Every Tuesday I'm going to share like a book that I'm reading to my class. And that was too stifling, because I would get to weeks and be like, I don't have a book that I want to share this week. And then I would feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to scrap something else together. So I like the visibility framework because it gives me enough structure that I know, okay, on the sell days, if I'm not selling something, I'm working on building my email list and sharing like a lead magnet. On the teach days, I could teach about anything. And same with the connect days. It gives me a framework, but I can play around within that framework. So I still have the flexibility of that.
I think one other thing that I wanted to mention is you have stuck with, Teacher Hustle University has been around a long time. I think you've been in a while. You have stuck with those frameworks and those methods over time, when oftentimes we get ourselves in the cycle of like, oh, like, but this other marketing person is talking about this strategy and this framework. I should be doing that. Oh, I should be doing this. I never hear you say any of those shoulds. You just simply like find the framework that works for you and stick with it. Any advice on that when you're thinking about your marketing strategy of like, how do you find the right framework and stick with it?
Yeah, that's something that was really hard for me because, like you said, it's taken time. And I'm someone who I like to see growth like right away. Like I want to see that it's working. And I've heard like so many different content creation strategies, and they were just all so involved and so cumbersome. And so I just had to make a decision like, okay, if I want to test if this is going to work, I have to test it for at least 6 months. And I gave myself like, okay, we're going to do this for 6 months. And then we're going to see at the end of that if we want to change anything. Because really, if I only did it for a few weeks, I wouldn't really know. So I've, just again, with how I put blinders on for social media, I tried to tune out other content creators and what people were saying, just like how you suggest, Alyssa, like find one person to listen to and just like go all in on them. So that is what I've really tried to do, is just to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this framework. I'll reevaluate in 6 months. I could always listen to someone else in 6 months, but for right now, let's see how this does. And then, it's been a while. It's been, I don't know, I'd say like a year or 2 years. And I was just finally starting to see growth, but it was so, gosh, I can't even explain the feeling when I finally started to see growth. I was just like, I finally feel like I did something right. And I'm just like, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm so happy that I didn't give up. There were so many times where I was like, it's just not working. Like, I'm done with this. But just really trying to stick with it and be like, nope, you said it was going to be 6 months. You're doing 6 months. It's just, if I had given up, I never would have found success that I found.
The 6 months is so good. It's challenging. Like that's
It's
a
hard.
lot of time to wait to see growth. But in the space that we're in and the way that we're setting up our businesses, it's not like opening a pizza shop where like you're going to open the door and you're going to sell pizza today. And like tomorrow you're going to sell some more pizza. It's like, no, we're going to put in a lot of work. We're going to create a bunch of stuff. And then we're going to wait it out and watch it grow. And then when it does grow, it can become more passive and we can take our foot off the gas a little bit. But I love that you give yourself the 6 months, even though that's hard. And I would love to know what does success look like for you? So at the end of the 6 months, how do you judge that success? How do you say like, yep, that did work. I'm going to keep going.
Well, at first I was all into like follower count, right? Like I was like, okay, I need to be gaining followers from what I'm posting. And then again, what you taught me was like, you can have 1 million followers and no one's buying anything, right? So I started to shift to just engagement. Are people commenting on my posts? Are people saving and sharing my posts? Are people sending me messages about my posts? And that was really the metrics that I used for Instagram to see like, is this working? And then when I started putting out, my wait list for my course and my actual course, and then I launched a mini course, is it translating into sales? That actually the first time I launched the course, it didn't. I got 8 people the first time. And I was like, all right, well, that sucks, not doing that again. But then I used what I was posting on social media to realize I was talking to people at a high level and they needed classroom management 101. Right? They weren't ready to find the function of behavior. They needed to know how to teach rules to their kids. So I scaled down. I completely rewrote my program. And that's what my people needed. So just trying to use Instagram to inform the offers that I create and then seeing like, okay, is that translating? Yes or no? And that's really how I measure success.
I know we're not supposed to give stickers. No, but you get all the gold stars. So good. So good. Megan, do you have thoughts? I feel like I can read your mind. You loved all of that too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, my thing was always the revamping. So I love that you kind of paid attention. And I think that there can be a lot of internal pressure you put on yourself, especially for that first launch, right? Of, high expectations. And it's not to say don't set a high goal or, try to get a lot of people in or whatever it is, but I think in some ways it's better to maybe set a low expectation for that first one, right?
Yeah.
And just say, really look at it as more, I just need a couple people in to test this and give me the feedback to show that not only are a couple people interested, and that's a big deal, right? Like, especially if you're selling to educators, those people, those are our people, right? Like we love them. They are spending their time, their energy, their effort, like, which is, I think, so, so valuable. So if you've gotten even just a couple of those people, they are precious. And to get the feedback from them is going to be incredibly valuable. So even if it is just a few people and you are, sad or frustrated that it doesn't feel like it was worth it, it will pay off if you can translate that feedback, if you can take, the insights that those people give you, if you can connect with them, and they'll probably be so excited to talk to you, right? Like get that personal attention. And then you can continue to evolve what you're doing based on that insight. The magic really happens when people do those tweaks and those audits. And I think that that's something that a lot of times we look at those people who are really successful and who have either large follower accounts or are doing the really big launches and kind of like miss the step of not even just that, like, oh, we all know they started from somewhere, blah, blah, blah. And maybe the product looks different now than it did then, but the iterations that it takes to get there are really a matter of, launching a couple times, but also talking and noticing what people in there are doing. So to start with that set number of people and then keep going, that's what you had to do in order to make it successful. And that's, a lot of people don't talk about that iteration process and how key it really can be, not just with marketing, but with your own, with your own offers and kind of what you're sharing with people within them, teaching them.
Yeah, such a good lesson. I've definitely heard marketers I've heard marketers say things like, oh yeah, my first launch, like I hit the launch button and people started rolling in and I made $30,000 in the first hour. And so if that's like not happening for you, you're like, oh, this is a failure. This is where are the people rolling in? And it's like, but that's, well, first of all, that might have happened in 2020 because that's just how it was back then. But having thousands of people roll into your course, your first launch, is actually really not a good scenario, because you need a small group of people to get feedback and to iterate on your product so that it becomes really good. It's not going to be great the first time around. And maybe you didn't even create it yet. Maybe you're going to get these 8 people in and you're going to kind of create it on the fly. That's the best way to do it. So I love that, having that small group to be able to nurture and create and get feedback. Because launches don't work like that.
I wish they did, but they do not.
Yeah, me too. They don't. No. Anybody who says that, I would definitely question. Okay, let's jump into our lightning round. I could keep Gina all day, but let's jump into the lightning round. Megan, take it away.
All right. So our first of 3 lightning round questions is, what's a favorite business resource for you to get kind of inspiration? Is a book, podcast, even a certain, place that you go to learn more and inspire you in your business?
Not trying to be teacher's pet here or anything, but I will just say that I was in THU at the very beginning when you first launched it, and I feel like I experienced so much imposter syndrome that I wasn't ready for it yet, right? Like I wanted like a quick, like, Gina, this is X, Y, and Z, this is what you need to do. And I wound up leaving because I couldn't make decisions. I had not niched down yet. I was still like trying to be what everyone else was being. And then I rejoined when I think 1 or 2 years ago, when I decided like, okay, I am committing, I am going to do the classroom management route. And I am ready to actually like own that. And just having, the course itself is super valuable. I refer to it, I go back and listen all the time, but just having that community there to be able to ask questions and get like almost immediate feedback from people, not only who, have really successful businesses, but from people who are at the same level as me as well, is just really valuable. I know whenever I'm trying to make a business decision, I go in and I ask a question and just get feedback from people who have expertise in areas that aren't my areas of expertise. So that really is, I would say, my number one. My second would just be, I am a constant reader of books, whether it's marketing or, just business books. I buy every book on Amazon that I could get my hands on, and just try to take away like 1 or 2 things from each book, trying to, yes, keep my blinders on and listen to, just one person, but also realize like, okay, if I want to work on like my brand story, I need to go see what this person is talking about. So number 1 would be THU. Number 2 would be just reading as much as I can.
Okay, I know it's a lightning round, but I gotta jump in. I gotta just say, but a couple of things, really great business advice here is, first of all, that your community is successful when your members can go in and get advice from one another and they don't need you to come in and answer that question. I go in the group to answer a question 10 minutes after it's been posted, and 5 people have already answered it the exact way I would answer it, because they've been in there so long and they've been going to the trainings. That is a true marker of like, that makes my heart happy. And then the other thing is just taking 1 or 2 things from a resource and being able to like zoom in on a certain area because you've covered that foundational piece already. Now you can zoom in on storytelling. It's like, cover that foundation and then give yourself permission to dig in on these other more specific areas. Sorry, Megan, I think you were going to say something and I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just going to say either a standout book or 2 titles, or even just recent ones that you've loved. I always got to get the specifics because I'm also an avid reader. So any titles come to mind of ones that you particularly love or have done recently that you recommend people check out?
Yeah, I really liked Building a Story Brand. That was like my most favorite. I did have to revisit it a few times though, because same thing with THU. Like the first time I read it, I didn't know what my story was, right? And I didn't think I was relatable to anyone. So that is definitely my go-to. And then, yeah, I don't really have any standouts besides that one. I did just get Atomic Habits though,
Good one.
for my birthday, which I am so excited to read because I feel like everyone always talks about that book. So
Good one.
hopefully that will be my second favorite.
Awesome. Love that. All right. Second one. I think I know the answer, but what is your favorite social media platform?
Definitely Instagram, hands down.
Yeah.
Do you go on TikTok at all?
So I tried TikTok and I feel so old. I don't know how to use it.
Same. Yep.
In my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to repurpose my reels from Instagram and post them on TikTok. And then like magically I'm on both platforms. I don't know how to use it. So
Yep. I think you're one or the other. If you can do both, you're lucky. But like it very much is, they have two different distinct personalities, almost the two platforms. Yeah.
Great. All right. So the last one is, what's just a great piece of business advice that you've received along the way? Something that has kind of helped you, stick with it and feel good about what you're doing.
I would just say to be consistent and to not give up, because it is so easy to try something and just be like, that failed, I suck, I can't do this. I'm trying to look at everything. I think this is a quote from Stu McLaren. He says that like, you never fail, you just learn. So I'm trying to take everything as like, that was an experiment. What did I learn from it? And, change something next time. So just keep going because it's not easy. Although I think we all want just like the distinct roadmap of this is how you're successful, but just try not to give up and you will find success once you can stay consistent and keep trying.
That's so good. I have goosebumps. I'm just so proud. It's really a good testament. Gina is a good testament to not giving up. I just love that whole story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And for the listeners who want to connect with you, let us know, where can they connect with you online?
Yeah, so I'm, like I said, on Instagram at Teaching with Heart. And then my website is teachingwheart.com. Most likely to find me over on Instagram. I spend the majority of my day scrolling Instagram and in the DMs. So yeah, that's where I am.
Love it. Okay. Thank you both. Thank you, Gina, for being here. And we'll see everybody in the next episode. If you had a light bulb moment during this episode, or you thought of an idea to share, join us inside our podcast community to tell us your thoughts on both the extracurricular and That Teacher podcast. We have a space for you to comment and chat with one another about each episode. We believe that sharing our experiences as educators is what keeps us moving, learning, and experiencing more of a sense of connection. You can join us inside the community to access all the podcast episodes and the discussion prompts. Just click on Join Community when you go to poppd.co.